Hello, everyone. This is my seminar on simulacra and simulation. This will be an analysis of the reading by Jean Baudrillard, and it will be an analysis of reality. So, first of all, let's get a basic overview of what we're talking about. This is simulacra and simulation. So, in simple quotes from Mr. Baudrillard himself in the procession of the simulacra, he says, "The simulacra is never that which conceals the truth. It is the truth that conceals that there is none, and that the simulacrum is true." So maybe breaking it down, we can have, I like to think of it in three levels. So there is the true reality. Um, and from the true reality, we can have an abstraction, which is a representational version of the true reality. And from the representational reality sprouts the simulated reality, which is the simulacra. And essentially, the simulated reality feeds off of the representational reality to create a new reality. So, from then, you can also have various further abstractions which create more and more perverted simulated realities. Um, Baudrillard essentially aims to expose how the whole of society is engulfed in this exact simulation. One example he uses is that postmodern society is not the territory, but rather the map of the territory. And yet, the territory would cease to exist because the map has become the new territory itself. And this would be considered hyperreal, which we'll get into in a couple of minutes. So early on in the reading, he mentions the divine irreference of images. So when thinking on these ideas of reality, it's only natural we arise on the idea of God, um, infinite everything, omnipresence and omnipotence, etc. But what becomes of divinity when it reveals itself in icons or representation? Um, one aspect that we can see through history is the arrival of iconoclasts, who were religious folk who forbade any depiction of divine imagery in opposition, in full opposition to representation slash simulation. So the question must be posed, how could the religion of God itself be perceived differently when observed through icon? Do people's ideas of divinity and God become perverted when experiencing only representation through icon? That's that idea. And further on, we get into hyperrealism and the imaginary. Hyperreal is essentially a term which it means the seamless blend between the simulation and reality itself. So this is the process, I would assume, through representation becoming new reality. And the example that Baudrillard uses in the procession of simulacra is Disneyland. So essentially, to Baudrillard, Disneyland represents it represents a full display of American values, imagination, and childishness. Um, and within that realm, it suggests that beyond Disneyland is purely like the adult world, quite boring. Um, and presented this Disneyland is presented as imaginary in order to make us believe that the rest of America or the world around us is real. Well, it turns out that the rest of America that surrounds Disneyland is the hyperreal, which conceals the fact that the real is no longer real, if you're following me here. So, simulation in representational society, uh, we see this transformation in society through the identities of individuals that live within the society. So I can extrapolate this and see that, well, consumerism is almost like this ultimate gateway of simulated identity. So you can see this as each and every one of us are aligning ourselves to our own stream of information, beliefs, values in a more and more fragmented way than previously. And what this does is creates more fragmented cultural identities. So, consumerist society might have one person forming their persona around perhaps some internet subculture. Um, and of course, this fragmented identity is en route to nihilism when confronted with identity crisis. So maybe not having uh, one unified culture to anchor onto might lead one to a disbelief in purpose. So the fragmented realities, this grand prevailing narrative of the world that is the new real and engulfed in simulation, essentially encapsulating everything from the historical accounts, our history, from sports culture, education streams, even, and very notably political stances too. So fragmenting identities through politics could be, well, separating one group of people from another um, very, very drastically. One is left and one is right. And the the simulated reality will allow us to align with certain values and ideas unique and distended from adjacent, people around us. This is where I would even consider that the simulated reality almost proposes the death of the family if it's not anchored under one unified cultural vehicle. Um, and I would almost argue that an act of rebellion against a simulated reality would be to create and proliferate more unified families. We have simulation as a product of accelerationism, and we're actually going to get into accelerationism later into the term, but I also want to relate this to technique. Our good friend Jacques Ellul speaks of technique and the increasing improvement of industry. So I see that as a form of accelerationism, but I also see simulation a in the wake. What is it? I also see simulation as a result of this technified accelerationism. I would say, and this is essentially because, well, language, image, and idea is also influenced by the progression of technique. So, along the path of this non or a post genetic evolution of of the world of language would be simulation. So, and In the wake of simulation lies the fruits of its labor, which is that societal shift and the new real. So, now that you have the power and you are distended from simulation, you must create a good reality. Simple as that. Just make your life good. Okay, thank you, and I hope you learned something, and that'll be it.